Hi everybody, it's Ryan here, and today we're going to be looking at effective exchange rates and how to construct an effective exchange rate index. This lesson is going to be using lots of Excel skills to help you develop your knowledge of effective exchange rates.
So what you'll have done by the end of this video is you'll have constructed an effective exchange rate trade-weighted index, as you can see this green line here, that runs over a period of time from 2009 to 2019, or the most recent data that's available. You'll see that compared to the UK's 5 major trading currencies: the Japanese yen, the euro, the US dollar, the Chinese yuan, and the Swiss franc. And you'll also be able to change the base year so that you can change your index to whatever you want it to look like.
It's a really cool exercise that will give you really solid knowledge of what effective exchange rates are and also allow you to be familiar working with index numbers. So let's get started. In order to construct our effective exchange rate index, I'm going to be using Bank of England database. First of all, I'm going to want to have a baseline effective exchange rate, the one that they calculate. So if I say effective exchange rate, and I can find the effective exchange rate index for sterling, which looks like this. The pound in general got stronger up until 2015, then it got weaker and has stayed relatively weak since then. I'm going to use the Bank of England database to get my currency values as well. I'm entering in those currency codes, which I'll put in the description of the video. These codes are the annual average spot rate for Chinese yuan, euro, Japanese yen, Swiss franc, and US dollar. So I'm selecting all of them. I want it over this 10-year time period, and it gives it to me here. But what I want is I want to be able to put this into an Excel document. I'm actually going to use CSV, which means comma separated values, which will open with Excel anyway. So here's what that download looks like, given different dates. Then I get the amount of the currency that 1 pound will buy for Chinese yuan, euros, Japanese yen, Swiss franc, and US dollars. I'm going to format this a little bit by first changing these dates into the year, because that's what I want it to represent. So I'm saying this is equal to year of this number here. I want that to be for all the years. And in fact, it will be easier if I actually have this in year ascending order. So I'm going to sort these by column A, the year, from smallest to largest. I'm going to clean up these column labels to be a little shorter. So I'm just going to label them by their currency codes: CNY, EUR, JP, JPY, CHF, and USD. In order to construct this index, I'm going to have 2 columns behind each one of these. So I'm just going to do that now. And each one of these columns is going to be, first of all, I'm going to make an index for the currency, and then I'm going to make a weighted index. And because I always want it to be based on this label here, I'm actually just going to use the value of the cell. So I'm going to say that's equal to this label and a text string that says index. And then I'm going to make this one equal to this label, and then a text stream which says weighted. And I can actually then copy and paste that to each of these other ones, which will make it nice and easy. Again, I'm just going to highlight all the columns and double click it so that it automatically justifies, so I can see those up here really nicely. I'm also going to make another column over here behind the US dollars, which just says effective exchange rate, because that's actually what we're hoping to get to at the end. I want to come up with an effective exchange rate is what we're doing here. So I'm ready to start filling this in. The one thing that I'm going to do that's a little bit tricky is I'm going to come up with a base year over here. I'm going to say that 2010 is my base year. I'm going to put that in bold so that I can change that around if I want to later to change my base year. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an index here for each of the currencies, which is going to be a value relative to 100, as the value is here relative to its base year, which is 2010. In order to have an easy reference for each base year, I'm actually going to just list the base year value down here. I'm going to use a function called VLOOKUP. It's a really useful Excel function. And what it does is it says, okay, if I've put this number in here, in this cell B3, I'm then going to look up in this table. I'm going to say if this is the table here between B2 and O11, I'm going to look up in that table and find the value in the column that corresponds to the number that I put in here, to the 2010. For the Chinese yuan, it's going to be the second column, so I enter that in here too. And as you can see here, if I enter 2010, it gives me the value that comes up in 2010. If I put in here 2013, it gives me the 9.61. But I'm going to keep it as 2010. I'm also going to change this slightly because I want to copy and paste this. I actually want to have absolute value. I want to have absolute referencing. So I'm just going to say that's going to be the absolute referencing, that's absolute referencing, and that's absolute referencing there. And so what that means, I can actually copy and paste this across. I'm saying, okay, put that there, but actually instead of the second column, I just count columns. I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's the fifth column for that one. I'm going to copy and paste it again here. And now it's not the fifth column, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th column. So I'm going to change that to 8. And each time along, it's just going to be, the reference column is actually 3 more columns. So that's not 8, it's 11. And that is now not 11, it's going to be 14. And that's what I've done here. So I've got this base value. Whereas for any year that I put in here, if it's 2010, it gives me this base value here, which is the currency value in 2010 for Chinese yuan, it was 10.46. For euros, it was 1.16. Japanese yen, 135. Swiss franc, 1.60. US dollar, 1.56. And if I change that to 2015, say, it changes all those base figures as well, which is what I wanted to do. So I'm going to change it back to 2010, and now I can come up with an index figure. So the index figure wants to be a figure which is relative to 100 as this figure is to the base year figure. So the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to say, right, it's equal to this figure here divided by the established base figure that we've got, which is here. I always want it to be in cell C13. I want it to do absolute referencing. And because it's an index of 100, I'm going to multiply that by 100. So there's 100 there. I can then pull that down. And what this gives me now in my index is it says, okay, for, in 2010, a pound bought me 10.461, and then it went down slightly, so that's why it went down from 100 to 99. It went down then to 9.9995, which is a relative decrease of, of 5% off of the base year. And then it went down further, and then it went up a bit, but then it went down again, down, down, down. And so that's what we get here. So by the end of it, the pound bought approximately just under 16% less yuan than it did in its base year. And of course, if I change that base year now, it changes the index around. And what we should always find is that the index should equal 100 in the base year that we have specified. So back to 2010, I can actually really handily, I can copy this and I can just put this into all of the other indices because it's all going to be referencing the column next to it. The only thing that we want to be able to do, just check yourself. First of all, make sure that it's always 100 in the base year, and just make sure that it kind of makes sense. So like, does this make sense for the US dollar? It goes up, so it goes from 100 to 103, then it goes down, and then it goes below the base year in this year 2015. And then down even further like this. And so and I'm looking at this, and that tends to make sense. Now what I need to do is I need to have a weighting for these, because I need to weight these based on how much trade we do with these different countries and their currencies. In order to do this, I'm going to go back to Bank of England ERI weightings. It brings me to a page about their annual reweightings of these indices. Lots of information here, including complex methodology about how it is that they determine the weights, but what I'm really interested in is the latest weights. So click through here, open the file. All right, and I've got my weights now for different countries. And the different countries are weighted based on how much trade they do with the United Kingdom, and that gives them this weight out of 100 over here. And or for any year, but I'm really interested in the year 2018. So I'm interested in the most recent year, so I'm actually going to hide all the other years just so that it's a bit easier for me to see what I'm working with. And then I'm also interested in those 4 countries that trade the most with the UK. So I'm actually going to sort these from largest to smallest to give me what I've got. So this makes sense. The total should equal 100. The largest is the euro area, then the USA. Then we've got Germany, which is part of the euro, so we won't take that one. But then we want China, and then these other countries here: France, Netherlands, Benelux, Ireland, Italy, Spain. They're all euro countries, so we won't use those weights. But we are then interested in Japan and Switzerland. We're interested in the top 5 currencies that we trade with, that being the euro, the dollar, China, Japan, and Switzerland. I'm going to grab these by filtering this and only then grabbing the ones that we're interested in: the euro area, USA, China, Japan, and Switzerland. So there we have it. I'm just going to take these, copy and paste them, and just put this into a blank area here on my in my workspace. Now, I'm not going to be able to use these weights here, because if you look at the sum of these weights, it does not equal 100, because there were lots of other countries that we didn't take because we're not going to bother having more than 5 currencies. But we want this weighting to be equal to 100 as well. So we're going to try to come up with some alternative weighting, which then gives us a proportional weighting. What this number would be to 81.6, we want a number equal to 100. And so I'll do that by saying it is equal to whatever is in this cell here divided by 81.6, putting the dollar sign in there as its fixed referencing to say that I always want it to be in this cell, B8. And then we're saying that these weights are out of 100, so I'm going to multiply it by 100. So that gives us now, instead of 48.6, 58.5. And then I'm going to replicate this down to give us a weight for each of the other currencies. And we should see now that the new weights add up to 100. So those are the ones that we're going to be using. So with those new weights, I'm going to then take these in, copy and paste them, and put them just sort of about here in my other sheet. And I'm going to then apply this weight to the weighted index that I want to have for my different currencies. So I'm just going to enter them in here. I'm just going to copy and paste them to say the euro area. I'll put this under the euro weighted, which is there. The USA I'll put here. The China weight I will put here. Japan's weighting I will put here. And Switzerland's weighting I will put here. Now it's just a matter of taking my index then and multiplying it by the weight. So in this case here, I'm just going to say it is equal to this number multiplied by this number down here, fixed referencing, so that I don't, when I replicate, I don't go down in rows as I do that. And I'm also going to just divide this by 100 as well, because we'll have to divide by 100 at some point. And so I'll do it here. Right? So there's my weighted Chinese index. I replicate that down, and it gives me that there. I can actually then just copy and paste that across, and it will give me weighted indices for each of my other currencies, as we can see. Last step then is to then just look at the effective exchange rate. So in order to do this, I am just going to say it is equal to each of my weighted indices. It is equal to the Chinese weighted index plus the euro weighted index plus the Japanese weighted index plus the Swiss franc weighted index plus the US dollar weighted index. Add that up, and thankfully, in my base year of 2010, that equals 100. And then again, I can just copy and paste down, replicate down. So I just pull that down, and that gives me now my effective exchange rate. So far, so good, but it doesn't mean anything really in this table here. It's all just a bunch of numbers. So in order to make this mean something, I'm going to put it into a graph. I'm going to do this the easy way, I think, by just selecting the things that I want to have, and Excel will do the rest for me. I'm going to say this is the year that I want. I want my Chinese index. I want my euro index. I'm pressing Control, by the way, to select different things between mouse clicks. I want my Japanese index, I want my Swiss franc index, I want my US dollar index, and then I want my effective exchange rate. If I then go up to Insert, Scatter diagram with markers and straight lines, I think is what we want for this. So I click Enter, and that is looking something like what I would hope to see. It shows a bunch of things, bunch of exchange rates fluctuating over time. We can make this a bit easier to look at by changing these axes. We never go below 60, so I'm just going to change this. I'm going to format the axis to say that the minimum is now going to be 60, not 0. That's going to give us a little bit more of a vision in terms of what we want to see here. I'm also going to relabel this sterling effective exchange rates. And it will also be useful, I think, to bold the actual index, to bold the effective exchange rate index. So I'm just going to format this. So I'm going to make the outline weight a bit heavier here so that it's very clear that this is my actual index here, the green one in bold. One thing that I might do is I might just make it so I can't see the other ones for just a minute. Just to have a quick spot check on this. Here's my sterling effective exchange rate, which I've constructed. Here's the one we got from the Bank of England, and I'm looking at this and I'm pretty happy with it. In 2010, 2011, it started to rise in 2012. As we can see here, it had a bit of a trough until it rose to its highest point in 2015, as we can see here. And then in 2016, it took a bit of a nosedive and has remained at a low rate since then, which is reflected in the official data. The only real difference here is because I've got a different y-axis than they have, because they've used 2005 as their base year, making that equal to 100, and I've used 2010, and so therefore when theirs starts at about 80 and goes up to 95, mine starts at 100 and goes up to 110. But the idea of it is exactly the same. So I'm really happy with that, which means that I can now look and say, right, let's look at some more data. Let's look at the other series in there, and to see how the pound has done compared to other currencies. And this is kind of a cool thing to look at, because what it does is it shows that the pound got really strong against the yen at one point. So in 2015, the pound had a big appreciation over the 5 years, about a 35% appreciation against the yen. But then it's fallen against the yen, but the pound is still relatively strong compared to the yen between 2010 and 2019. Similar story with the euro. We had quite a bit of strength against the euro in 2012, big strength against the euro in 2015. We've now seen a slide against the euro, but the euro has remained relatively stable, at least more than it would be in terms of the effective exchange rate that we see with other currencies. The big depreciation that we've seen in the pound has been against the Chinese yuan, which over this time period has depreciated by about 20%. We also see some depreciation against the Swiss franc, but primarily that depreciation is against the US dollar. And if you look at what's happened to the pound against the US dollar on any currency website, you will see that same general trend. I think the cool thing about looking at an effective exchange rate graph is that it enables you to look beyond just one currency versus the other. I tend to always look at the pound versus dollar because they're two currencies that I know really well. But it's useful to know that the pound actually had a big appreciation against the yen, a big appreciation against the euro, even as it was falling against the dollar. One last thing that you can do if you've used the VLOOKUP function, which is really useful, is you can change the base year and it will change it through the graph as well. So as you can see, I've used 2010 as the base year for all of the currency indices, including the effective exchange rate index, which means that they all start here at 100 and then they move relative to 100. But if I change that now, it will change it in all the data, which means that I can change my graph to look something like this. This shows now the base year being 2015. It shows the same data, but in a slightly different way, because what it means is that they all now converge in the year 2015. If I wanted to, I could change it now to 2019, which would show something similar. It just means now that they all come together in the most recent year, which is our base year. I tend to find it easiest if I have the base year be something in the very beginning, and then I can see what's happened relative to that period of time. So there you have it. Well done. I hope you found that exercise useful. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please make sure you give it a like and subscribe to this video for more interesting economics content.